Hello, both sides of the conversation family. We welcome you to this virtual space crafted especially for you. My name is Jada Curry, and I'm both sides of the conversation's marketing director and graphics design specialist. I want to take some time to ground us all as a community into this space we are about to open up in, so let's go through our community standards. Both sides of the conversation is providing a safe and honest space for open conversation, so we ask that you all be respectful of that. We also ask that you be respectful of each panelist, host, and participant. We do encourage healthy debates and conversations. Don't personalize anything with anyone. This includes name-calling, bullying, trolling, or shaming. This will not be allowed or tolerated. Your perspective is yours. It is not a prescription. You do not have to agree, but show respect. These community standards apply to all of our live shows and any virtual spaces that we hold on social media, including YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We want to make sure that we are caring for each other as a community. This is our priority in all of our endeavors as both sides of the conversation. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed today's show and continue to stay in touch with us via YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or all of them. All right, thank you for listening and see you soon.
Welcome everyone to Both Sides of the Conversation Live. We meet here virtually every Sunday at 2 p.m. I am your co-host, Brittany Doyle, and I would like to introduce you to the executive director and host of the show, John Henry.
Welcome everybody to Both Sides of the Conversation. I'm John Henry. Today we have a phenomenal conversation that we're going to talk about. This is something I know community's been asking about. They are here today. We have some phenomenal panelists. We are talking about the drug addiction and the homeless issues that are impacted not only here in San Francisco, but across these United States of America. So we have a phenomenal group that's going to be up to help us go through this conversation, educate and bring this awareness that we need in our community. We're going to get the answers, the solutions, and we're going to hear the models of some of these programs, how they work, how they impact communities. So I'm looking forward to today's conversation, and I'm excited about that today. But with that being said, we're going to get through our community announcements, talk about what's going on, so Brittany could go ahead and start introducing today's panelists. With that being said, first we want to give a huge shout out to our San Francisco Giants. Even though that they didn't make it to the playoffs, they had a phenomenal year. Way to bring some excitement back to the city through the sports, through this pandemic. It's just nice to see them all year, the ups and downs, see the people back in the community. Phenomenal to see the Giants doing their thing for this year, and hopefully next year they'll get a little further. With that being said, I want to give a huge shout out to the City Eats. Yesterday we had a phenomenal feed where we fed over 1,300 people. We had amazing amount of volunteers who came out and supported our young people. First, I want to say to all of the families, the mothers and fathers of the community, and the aunties and the grandmothers that brought the young people out to help feed those in need is very important, very impactful. So I want to give a huge shout out to all of those families who came out, brought the young people, and they was able to package up the food, get out in community, see what's going on, and understand what's happening in our city from a young person standpoint. So that was just phenomenal. Want to give a huge shout out to Mary Rivers, to Carnell Nicholson, to Renata Mason, a number of the Both Sides of the Conversation team for getting out in community, donating water, PPE kits, getting it out to community. That was just phenomenal to see how community was just coming together, helping impact the people in need in our city. As you all know, this homeless conversation that we're going to have, you'll see the impact and how it's happening. It is a terrible thing, but it is real. So just wanted to put that out. And then lastly, I want to give a huge shout out to the Gators. We had the San Francisco State's men's and women's basketball team came out yesterday to help feed those in need. What a phenomenal job. The coaches, this is what leadership look like. We need coaches like that to teach our young people. It's not just about the sports. It's just not about the things that you're doing. There's also a bigger problem and things that's going on around you that you have to be a part of. So to Coach Henry and to the women's basketball coach, it was just powerful to see our young people out there. So just want to give San Francisco State and their leadership a good highlight and support. It is phenomenal when we have coaches who stay humble and make sure that our young people still have that compassion and humility for the people. And it was just nice to be out there with them. Want to give a huge shout out to Us for Us, Vibes and Smile, and all of the other organizations that came out and participated. It takes a village to make this change. We have to be the change. We can't just complain about the problems, what's going on in our city, what's going on around us. We have to jump in and do that. So just want to say huge shout out to all of the volunteers and all the community leaders that stepped up, came out and made the donations to help impact the community. It was just a powerful, phenomenal event. And also today, the City East, they are out there right now for their volunteer community appreciation. They right across the street from the Costco on 11th Street. We weren't able to be out there because this conversation is so important. And it's a very, very important conversation for me. So I know they wanted me out there, but I couldn't be out there today. But our Both Sides of the Conversation team is out there. We'll be recording, catching videos and things of that nature. And we'll get that out to the community. But we wasn't able to attend today, but we out there and we love our City East folks. With that being said, there was a number of events across the city. Just happy to see that our community is still moving forward, doing things in this pandemic and out of this pandemic to impact our community. We got some phenomenal events coming up. But shout out to the Bayview Opera House for putting on some real cultural stuff yesterday. There was a number of events going on across the city, and I'm just happy to see that and be a part of it. And we'll get all that information out to the community. With that being said, for everybody watching today, please go to our YouTube channel, Both Sides of the Conversation. If you would like to ask questions or interact with today's panelists, please use the live chat function on our YouTube channel. If you're on our Facebook page, again, a lot of those comments come in and we can't see who it is. So if you want to have that interaction, please go to our Both Sides of the Conversation YouTube channel, like, subscribe, turn on the alert notification. Anytime we go live, any community event, any functions that we're a part of, you'll be alerted and you'll know how to tune in. With that being said, shout out to the Both Sides of the Conversation team getting our newsletter out. If you haven't subscribed to our newsletter, please go on our website, subscribe so you can keep up with us and get updates, what's going on, what we're doing, what events we're part of, and what community partners we are working with. It is very, very important for us to connect those resources to the community, as we'll be asking those community organizations to submit all of their community events, as we're trying to connect and make a community calendar that helps impact our community with the resources and the information. So phenomenal event. And then yesterday, yesterday was the abortion right activist rally for abortion justice throughout the country. We was out there yesterday while we was feeding the homeless on Market Street. Thousands and thousands of people rallied for abortion justice. We saw so many people out there and we was saluting them and pushing them forward. It was about 600 protests all across this country yesterday. And we was right here in San Francisco. It was a huge event. A number of people were out there, and this is all stemming from the Texas law that was passed on abortion rights a couple of weeks ago. So this is a continue to go on for people to have their space, their mind, their body, their peace. So it was pro-choice. Nice to see all of the women and men in the community that supported that march, and it was huge. So phenomenal event. In Oakland is launching some new resources for renters and landlords. The city officials opened up about emergency rental assistance program on Friday to help renters in need of paying rent, as well as helping property owners. We know the moratorium had ended, so a lot of people was worried, how are they going to pay their rent? There's some information that we're going to get across the screen. If you are in Oakland and you are looking for rental assistance, or if you're a landlord in Oakland, you're looking for rental assistance, we'll put that information up on the screen. There's a phone number that you can reach, but we'll get it up on the screen. I don't know where my production team is, but they'll get it up there on the screen shortly. And you guys will see that information. There's a troubling trend of suspected overdoses on the BART system. I don't know if you all ride BART here in the Bay Area, but they have been running across a number of fentanyl overdoses, drug addiction overdoses that's happened on our BARTs. The cause of deaths have just, increased over the last couple of months. Very, very important topic today. We have our young people taking public transportation. We have our elders taking public transportation. And when we see these type of overdose and these type of drug abuse on our public transit system, our community is impacted. And, that's why we're having this important conversation. And sometimes when young people see these type of overdoses and these type of things happen in our community, it can be very, very traumatic for them. So we want to be acknowledged of that. Some of the community events that is coming up, I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what's going on in the community. The Black Panther Party is having their historic 55th anniversary this month. The whole month from October 1st to 31st, they are going to be doing events all over the Bay Area, all across the United States of America. We're going to get this information. You can plug up what's going on with them. There's a number of things. And then we are honored here at both sides of the conversation because on October 17th, they will be having a virtual celebration on our platform. So we are just honored to be a part of that celebration and that lineage and that history. So looking forward to that. But if you want more information, please look at the screen. That is the website. You can find out they're going to have some tours, some exhibits and things of that nature. Very, very important stuff. So check it out. We'll keep getting that stuff on the screen throughout today's segment. And if you want to know more about that information, you also can go to our website, Both Sides of the Conversation, and get that as well. The Indian Basin, APRI in San Francisco, they are providing free high-speed Wi-Fi, laptops, and any kind of technical support out at the Bayview Indian Basin every day, Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. My guy Kurt, Chica, and the team is out there. If you're looking to write resumes, if you need Wi-Fi access, if you need to use a laptop, that is where you want to go. They'll be out there in the parks. I'll find out from Kurt what they're going to do when it starts raining. But right now, during the day, they are out there in the parks. You could pull up. You could get some support from them. They have some professional folks out there that's helping people write resumes. They have some tech stuff that they're teaching people how to use the internet, different stuff. Please go to the Indian Basin parks, reach out to the APRI, and they'll be helping folks out there with that as well. The City Administrator Small Business Summit is happening. If you want to look at that information, the San Francisco Public Health Foundation on October 4th, they got a small business thing to teach people how to do business with the city and county of San Francisco. It's a virtual event. That information is up on the screen. We'll get the phone numbers and information out to them. That's very, very important for our entrepreneurs, our small business, our people that's thinking about getting into business. If you want to do business with the city and county of San Francisco, please utilize that website. They're having a virtual event on the 5th and the 6th at 9 and 9:30 a.m. Please tune in to get that information. With that being said, the East Oakland Collective Bike and Ride Creek Cleanup is coming up Saturday, October the 9th, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It's going to start at Liberation Park at 11 a.m. They're going to have groups of people to ride their bikes at San Leandro Creek, clean up. They're going to have a party. They're going to have resources there, games, food, music. If you're in the East Bay or if you're in the city, you want to go support the East Bay, please check out that event. Look up the East Oakland Collective. They're on Instagram, Facebook, all around. They're doing some powerful, powerful work to impact our community. So please check them out. And then on October 10th, want to give a huge shout out. We're going to be out there, both sides of the conversation. We are going to have our breast cancer awareness conversation, but we're going to have Miss Brittany hold it down while I'll be out in the community. We are celebrating Dr. Carolyn Scott's 75th birthday celebration at the Bayview Opera House. We'll be out there. If you want to make a donation to her birthday, she's a powerful, powerful sister. We love Dr. Commissioner Scott. We'll be out there catching some of the footage in community with the folks. So that'll be happening October 10th, next Sunday. Also, the Av Bear Authentic Toy Drive is coming up. If you would like to donate toys, if you want to help community out, the toy drive, they're starting to collect Saturday, October 23rd from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's 1607 Ocean Avenue in San Francisco. As we start approaching the holiday, there's a big need for toys, tents, sleeping bags, coats. The weather's going to be changing. It's going to be getting cold. There's going to be a number of drives happening. Community be a part of it, and we'll get that information out to the community as well. And then on October 16th and 17th, man, phenomenal, phenomenal stuff. The San Francisco Bay Area Theater Company, the Roots, the New Roots Theater Festival is happening. We're going to be out there. Y'all heard Rodney them past Tuesday on our Hidden Gem show coming on talking about this event. It is powerful. If you want to see some Black theater, you want to see some Black folks that's creating some powerful theater, check this event out. October 16th and 17th from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. It's going to be at the Brava Theater Center at 2781 24th Street here in the Mission in San Francisco. It's going to be a great event. We have the Halloween block party on Ocean Avenue, the OMI, my guy Maurice Rivers. You guys want to get out there and celebrate Halloween with our young people Saturday, October 23rd from 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. at Faxon Ave between Ocean and Dumerfort in San Francisco. It's going to be free to the public. If you want to contact Maurice Rivers to get more information, maybe you want to sponsor or do something, please reach out to Brother Rivers. The OMI, they're doing some powerful stuff to bring back to community. So we're looking forward to that event. The San Francisco African-American Elder Childhood Educators are hosting the activity for the youth. It's a free public event, October 17th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. They're going to be located at Lee Ave, Ocean and Holloway. If you want more information, please dial 415-298-8367. We'll get that information up on the screen. Connect with them as they are doing phenomenal things to educate our community. With both sides of the conversation, events, announcements coming up. This Tuesday, like you all know, every Tuesday, we have our Hidden Gem segment where we will continue to highlight our Black and brown businesses, as well as community leaders that are doing positive things to impact our community. So this Tuesday, you could join us live. We'll be highlighting some more phenomenal businesses and some amazing people that's in our community doing some great work. This Thursday, we have a phenomenal educational presentation. We're going to have Miss Caroline Dunlap. She's going to be doing a re-entry educational Thursday. I hope you all will be able to join it. We'll be talking about some of that stuff here today, but I want you all to join this Thursday for an important conversation on educating people about reentry. It's going to be a great show. And then next Sunday, we'll have our breast cancer awareness conversation on the 17th. It'll be the Black Panther Party 55th anniversary. And then on 10/24, we will have a domestic violence awareness conversation about domestic violence. As you all know, this is October. It is breast cancer month, but it's also domestic violence awareness month. And we're going to have those conversations. We're going to have some domestic violence survivors, some organizations who work with domestic survivors and victims. We're going to have that very important conversation. And then trick or treat at the end of the month, the last Sunday of the month, we're going to have a conversation about microaggressions in the workplace. I think this is going to be a very important conversation for community. That's a trick or treat conversation, but I think it's a conversation that needs to happen. So looking forward to that. With that being said, I'm going to close my mouth now. Thank you all for community, for being patient with me as we get through the community announcements, as it is our job here at both sides of the conversation to make sure we connect the resources and what's going on with our community so that everybody has an option to get involved. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn over to Miss Brittany, and she's going to go over about the topic and the theme today, give some background, and then we're going to go ahead and introduce today's guest and get started.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I'm clear. So you said next week I have to do the show by myself. I'm going to be here by myself.
I'll be here.
Is that?
I'll be here.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I heard you right. Just wanted to make sure. Okay. So for today's topic, as you know, is drug addiction and the homelessness crisis. And this is very important because San Francisco has seen a major increase in both drug addiction and homelessness for various social and economic reasons. According to local statistics, drug users are dying at a rate of 2 per day. And many of that is happening on the streets of the Tenderloin district. And the pandemic has only magnified this problem, shining a bright light on a lot of the social issues that are taking place in our tech-heavy society. So just to give some background information, or just some information, just for education, according to Pacific Research Institute, roughly 34% of homelessness in San Francisco are homeless due to direct economic factors, such as evictions and job losses. Another 12% became homeless when they lost the safety net of family and friends. A team at Zillow found that once cities cross a threshold where the typical resident must spend more than a third of their income on housing, homelessness begins to spike rapidly. About 15% are due to drug addiction or substance abuse. According to more statistics, 6.9% of African Americans have a substance use disorder compared to a rate of 7.4% among the total population. 3.4% of African Americans have an illicit drug use disorder compared to a rate of 3% among the total population. And so we talk about what the problem is here in San Francisco. And San Francisco and communities alike are immersed in drug addictions and overdoses. We see it in a lot of places around the city. Families are grief-stricken with the loss of loved ones who succumb to the opioid epidemic. It is reported that San Francisco is engulfed with fentanyl, exacerbating the drug issues in this beautiful city. Housing discrimination, strict zoning regulations, and gentrification has made it extremely difficult to gain access to hospitable and livable housing for underrepresented and underserved residents of San Francisco and throughout the entire Bay Area. And so when we talk about solutions for drug addiction, our mayor, London Breed, spoke at a news conference on September 28th at the Castro Country Club with other officials, urging Governor Newsom to sign State Senator Scott Wiener's Senate Bill 110, a substance use treatment bill. According to news outlets, the bill was introduced by the San Francisco Democrat. The Bill 110 would expressly legalize contingency management as a way to treat substance use disorder and authorizes Medi-Cal to cover it. Contingency management, which offers incentives, including financial incentives for staying sober. The treatment model is already used by the VA and the San Francisco AIDS Foundation and is proven to be effective to help people overcome their addictions to stimulant drugs like methamphetamine and, for stimulant drugs like methamphetamine. And so when we talk about the solutions for homelessness, there's a lot of solutions. A lot of people have come to the table with a lot of solutions. And so we can start at the top where we can get state and local leaders to publicly commit to and coordinate efforts on ending chronic homelessness. We can identify and be accountable to all people experiencing homelessness, including people constantly cycling through the institutional systems. You're seeing people going through the revolving door constantly. We can ramp up outreach and reach and engagement efforts, implement a housing first system orientation and response. We can hold a lot of people accountable to put forth short-term housing placement goals, prioritize, engage and support public housing agencies and multifamily housing operators. We can leverage Medicaid and behavioral health funding, and we can help people increase their income through employment opportunities and connections. But these are just some solutions. There are a lot of solutions that can come to the table. And so today we have a wonderful panel that is going to inform us, educate us on how we, as members of San Francisco, as a community, can address situations like this. And so as I introduce the panel, I'm going to say your name. And as I say your name, you can go ahead and give a brief introduction and let us know a little bit about yourself. And we're going to start with Thomas Wolf.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you so much for including me in this conversation. It's an extremely important conversation. My name is Thomas Wolf. I'm currently a recovery advocate based out of San Francisco. A little bit of background on me is that I'm formerly homeless, and I'm also in recovery from heroin and fentanyl addiction. Just 3.5 years ago, I was living on the streets of the Tenderloin on the 300 block of Golden Gate Avenue, severely addicted to drugs. In my case, drug addiction is what caused my homelessness. I was married, father of 2, homeowner. I had a job with the city and county of San Francisco as a child support officer. I lost all of that because of an addiction to opioids, oxycodone, and then it gradually increased and spiraled into heroin and eventually led to my homelessness. But again, I'm really glad to be here to talk about these important issues that are affecting this community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Next, we have Erica Sandberg.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I am a longtime San Francisco resident, 33 years. Very passionate about this city. I'm a journalist, been covering the homelessness and drug issue crisis here in San Francisco for many years. And unfortunately, I've only seen it get worse and worse. I think how we have approached the problem, unfortunately, a lot of good people, great hearts, but we're seeing a net result that is not positive. So I'm really hoping that we can move this conversation forward and help everybody who's on the street, everybody who needs and wants treatment to get it and to really make a major impact on what we're seeing, which is pretty brutal. So I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much. Craig Johnson. I think he might be having a little.
Yeah, Craig is frozen right now. Everybody apologize. The Wi-Fi issues. We'll get Craig back up when he gets his Wi-Fi situated.
All right, I'll check back in with him. Cedric Akbar.
Good afternoon, everyone. Cedric Akbar, servant of the people of San Francisco, and I'm a recovering addict, recovering from heroin use and also from years and years of prison life. Currently been working in this field of substance use and helping the formerly incarcerated people for over 25 years, and serve the people of San Francisco by giving them support and guidance when they are returned back to our community.
Thank you so much. Steve Adami.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. My name is Steve Adami, and I am the director of the Reentry Division of the Adult Probation Department. Also, somebody who spent a couple decades in and out of jail and prison, addicted to drugs, homeless, just kind of running amok. And I'm grateful to be part of this conversation today. These conversations in San Francisco in particular are extremely difficult. Everybody is so wed to their ideas and their views. And I think it's always important to talk to the people who have experienced it to come up with solutions. Those who were actually once the problem actually have become the solution to most social problems. So thanks for having us today, and we're looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we're looking forward to your presentation. Your video next. Victoria Westbrook.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name is Victoria Westbrook. I currently work as the Women's Gender Responsive Coordinator and the Reentry Policy Planner for Adult Probation. I was indicted on drug trafficking charges by the feds, and really what led to that is more than 20-year long meth addiction. I released in 2016, and this is an issue that I feel very strongly about, and that I feel that we as a city can do much better at working to solve it. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, and checking back in with Craig. Was he able to come back up?
We got to see. Let me see. I'm going to try to get him up here and see. I think he's having problems loading in. Everybody be patient. As you all know, in San Francisco, the Wi-Fi is poor, very, very poor. Hopefully with this infrastructure money, we can get some of this stuff fixed for our fiber optics. But we'll give Craig on as soon as we get Craig some service here. We'll bring him up and introduce him. But Craig is a powerful fella. Y'all have seen him around the city. He got a great story. But we'll get Craig up here as soon as he get some connection. Let's see. He's trying to get up here. Oh, there you go. There you go. Craig, are you good?
Yeah, I think I'm good. Yeah.
Go ahead and introduce yourself to the people, man. Tell them who you are and what you're doing. We know you're having Wi-Fi trouble, but go ahead and tell the folks who you are, man.
All right. My name is Craig Johnson. I'm a founding member of Positive Direction Equal Change and currently director at the TRP Academy located at 630 Gary Street. Do I need to say some more?
No, that's it. We're going to get started. We're going to have a lot to say in a second. We'll get y'all up there.
All right.
Brittany, go ahead and introduce Steve Community. We're going to have a nice, powerful video Steve's going to put up there, and then we're going to jump into today's conversation.
All right. Steve, go ahead and take it away.
We got to get Roxanne to go ahead and put up. Roxanne, please put in the PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah, Roxanne will take care of it. Give me a second. Let me just kind of preface what's going to happen next. So about 6 months ago, Cedric, Craig, Tom, and Erica were asked to be in a documentary that is about homelessness, addiction, and then solutions to homelessness and addiction that are taking place in other parts of the state and actually outside of California and Texas and other places. As the way people are addressing the issue. So when I first saw the documentary, I thought, wow, we need to share this thing with a broader network of folks. So we did at the Reentry Conference in San Francisco last week, we showed it and held a panel discussion, and it was very interactive. The audience kind of took over the presentation, so it was kind of amazing. And today we're hoping to share it with more people. And again, I want to say that like everybody's got an idea. Like I think nobody here wants to see homelessness. We all want to see everybody living inside. I think with some of the issues that have come up that I have heard from the community is that often what we see is we never really get to what's causing the problems. And so we're not really reaching the full potential of people. And I think it's important, especially for people that have social stigma, to really help them to stabilize and reach their full potential. And what we're seeing often from the community is that people aren't given the platform to do that. And, this documentary is tough to watch. It's real. It's live footage on the streets. And Cedric, Craig, and Erica and Tom are chiming in throughout this whole thing. And it's going to be an eye-opener for a lot of people. So with that said, let's get on with the show and show this video.
Your first reaction might be to say, oh my gosh, all these poor people were on the street. This is terrible. But what's really important is, are you really seeing the underlying issues? Why are they there? And that question is the most important question to answer.
More than 500,000 Americans are homeless on any given night. The problem has grown worse in recent years.
Why is a city as prosperous as San Francisco have a homeless problem? Homelessness is a disease, just like addiction.
New encampments have been popping up throughout LA in the last 5 months.
The state of California can no longer treat homelessness and housing insecurity as someone else's.
We don't want to be the tip of the spear.
How did we get here?
It's unconscionable. What do we do? We don't have time.
Ma'am, the paramedics are coming. They're here.
Look on the ground. What is it that you're seeing? You're seeing pieces of foil for fentanyl. You're seeing hypodermic needles, all kinds of evidence that says this is not a poverty problem. This is something else entirely.
Lost at least 5 people that I knew on the street to fentanyl overdose.
They don't want to listen. But a lot of it is because there's nobody teaching them about recovery, about accountability, about being productive, and you can get out of this. It's okay. Stay there on the ground. Nobody's saying get up off the ground.
Nowhere is the homeless crisis more apparent than San Francisco. The Golden City spends hundreds of millions of dollars each year to address homelessness. Yet the problem has exploded. Politicians promise to end the crisis.
We are going to eliminate homelessness by the end of this year.
Only to throw up their hands in defeat.
I'm on the same network you're on.
So what went wrong? Why are some cities surrendering while others are reducing their homeless population? As in many cases, it boils down
to TRP on the fucking banner.
Nearly all the
copy and paste is doing this all the time from the website. Watch.
Housing first.
Watch.
And the housing first model is premised on a very simple and almost intuitive idea that if you're homeless, the problem is that you need a house. And so to solve homelessness, we should merely give people homes.
And now this policy is being pushed from the top down.
The program, as I understand it, was started out of New York for the very severely chronically homeless, I believe in the 80s and 90s, and the Bush administration got a hold of it, implemented it in 2008. Under the next administration, it was rolled out as a one-size-fits-all solution.
And there's a lot of appeal to that idea that, look, if this person is going to be on the street for 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it is, why don't we just give them a house and not deal with all of the problems of picking them up, putting them in jail, putting them in a hospital, doing the rest of it. Let's find a central place where we can treat them. The problem with this theory is that if you look at the numbers of what's actually causing people to be homeless, it's overwhelmingly problems with mental health and drug addiction.
And Housing First requires no sobriety or treatment in order to receive permanent housing.
If you're going to put somebody in housing and you don't provide any type of services for them, no treatment services, no case management, no anything for them, you just stick them in the house just so you don't have to look at them and they can do what they want in there, how are we really helping?
You want to draw someone in and you want to help them get off the street, right? So what they do is they just say, well, we're just going to allow the drugs anyway. And now you have all these people that are staying in shelters, that are staying in navigation centers, that are living in tent encampments, using in massive quantities of meth of fentanyl, heroin, crack cocaine. The city sanctions their drug use within that city sanctioned site that your tax dollars and my tax dollars are paying for.
I mean, it brings tears to my eyes because it doesn't look at the individual. It doesn't look at what his or her potential is, and it doesn't help them develop that. To say that all we're going to do is help them aspire to be like that for the rest of their lives by sticking them in a house and not addressing, the issues, it's horrible. I think it's one of the most oppressive things we've done in this century, to be honest with you. And I'm so committed now to getting this changed.
From 2004 to 2014, San Francisco spent $2 billion on 3,000 new units of permanent housing at a cost of $666,000 per unit, more than double the median home price in America. That money could be spent so much more effectively.
It's shocking to me how little innovation we have because everything is permanent supportive housing or bust, and everything else in between is just keeping you alive until you get there. The problem is that half the people on the street aren't going to be alive to realize that housing.
Los Angeles felt the impact of Housing First immediately.
Reverend Andy Bales from the Union Rescue Mission says he saw it coming in 2014 when the national thought process on homelessness shifted towards a housing first model. He says he saw donations to the missions on Skid Row plummet.
We had foundations that used to give us $1 million shift to housing first only. We had another foundation that shifted that gave us $750,000.
And only now is his intuition providing proof. This study, released this week from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, showing since the recovery services decreased, homelessness went up more than 15% nationwide.
Compounding the problem, cities like Austin, Texas have legalized street camping. Addicts poured out of shelters and treatment, back to where drugs, alcohol, and crime abound. In Austin, homeless deaths rose by 25% in a matter of months.
The number that should absolutely horrify Americans is that in LA, you have about 3 individuals die on the streets a day. If you look at this relative to the whole homeless community in LA, this means that they have death rates higher than soldiers that we sent off to Iraq or Afghanistan.
First of all, it's no place to live, right? You living in a tent or in a doorway, it is so substandard, right, for anybody. This is not a way for a human in this year to ever live. There's no infrastructure for it. Where's the toilet? Where's the sanitation? Where's the ability to even get help when you're sick, right? It's not there.
In May of 2021, Austin residents voted to reinstate the city's camping ban.
I just believe that today is just no accountability in society as a whole for people's actions anymore. It's like I'll use the bathroom any way I want to, whether it's in front of kids or not. I'm just saying about what I see. And I'm still going to serve those that are in need or somebody that's going to always be less fortunate than me. We've worked with programs that when they first started, like taking people off of the street, housing programs, people would live in houses and live in rooms and still like they were living on the street. They wouldn't sleep in the bed. Everything was close to them. Paranoia set in. They didn't trust anybody being in there. They didn't even know how to live inside.
Are we providing housing for homeless people so they can get off the street so we don't have to look at them? Are we providing them housing so they can be able to sustain themselves and be able to live?
1,000 individuals dying on the streets every year is not compassionate, and merely saying we're going to let people camp on the streets because we think it's uncompassionate to push them off it is not the right path. Places like San Diego and others say, listen, if we're going to push you off the streets, we're going to give you an alternative.
And according to people who have experienced homelessness firsthand, the root of the problem is mental illness and addiction, not housing.
Good morning. The meeting will come to order. Welcome to the Thursday, February 11th meeting of the Public Safety and Neighborhood Services Committee.
Agenda 1 is a hearing on the San Francisco Recovery Summit Working Group report and findings.
Tom Wolf, I'd like to invite you to speak.
Good morning, everyone. Only 3 years ago today, I was sleeping on a piece of cardboard in the doorway on Golden Gate and Hyde in the Tenderloin, severely addicted to heroin. I am living proof that there's a direct correlation between homelessness and substance use in the city. You can build all the housing and get everybody off the street housed, but if you're struggling with addiction or mental illness, you're just housed with drug addiction and mental illness. People say, oh, I lost my job and I became homeless. But then you have to ask, why did you lose your job? I lost my job because I was going to work and shooting up in the bathroom on my lunch break, and then going back and sitting on my desk and passing out. From what I saw and the people that I encountered on the street, it's about 8 out of every 10 people that are visible that we see every day out on the street, living in tents, etc. They're struggling with addiction.
A recent study agreed. Over 75% of unsheltered have a drug or alcohol addiction, and a similar number also have a severe mental health disorder.
I was a child support officer for the city and county of San Francisco. It was a very stressful job, working with a lot of domestic violence victims. I became homeless because of my addiction, and I think a lot more people do become homeless because of addiction than what people think. You know, scientifically, we know that addiction is a disease. So my survival instincts got basically corrupted by these drugs. I also needed drugs in the same kind of way that I needed food. I would do anything to get them, making up lies to get money from my family while I was out there. And while I was on the street homeless, even then, I still thought I had some control over my life because all I really wanted in my addiction was the drugs. That's how powerful it is. Some people criticize me for some of the stuff that I say, but you know what? It can't just be all touchy-feely out there, because being on the street is not touchy-feely.
Cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles fail to realize the power of addiction and dangerously believe that addiction is a choice, not a disease. They condone this behavior and even help promote it.
One of the main policies that I feel like I'm constantly battling is the city's obsession with harm reduction.
The baseline goal of harm reduction is to keep you alive long enough in the hopes that you'll find recovery. But what it's morphed into in San Francisco is something different. It's really blurring the lines between harm reduction and then drug promotion at the same time.
How this is playing out on our streets is that instead of encouraging treatment, what we say, just keep on going.
Every program that has a program has to have a harm reduction policy within it.
One of those requirements that's listed really down at the bottom and buried in there is that you need to have clean drug paraphernalia available at all times for the residents of your drug rehab. They'll hand out a pamphlet saying, here are some safe ways for you to use fentanyl so you don't overdose. Make sure you use a clean needle, make sure you clean the area that you're going to inject, make sure you register it before you inject the needle inside your vein. And then at the end of all that, it'll say, enjoy your high. Here I am trying to kick heroin, man. And I'm in the drug rehab and I walk by the table every day with syringes and cookers and foil and straws looking right at me and pipes. And you wonder why nobody's getting clean. You make it easier to get high and so hard to get treatment in San Francisco that it hurts. And it's literally killing people.
In 2019, the city saw a 70% increase over 2018 in overdose deaths. And during the pandemic, San Francisco went so far as to deliver free drugs and alcohol to homeless staying in hotel rooms that the city paid for. What happens when a city plays drug dealer? In 2020, the death rate among San Francisco homeless doubled. Many of these lives could have been saved. We know how to fix this problem. And the good news is that leaders across the country are doing just that.
Homelessness is not an issue in California. It is the issue. When I first took office, it quickly became clear to me that the search for consensus on the perfect thing to do was turning into non-action, not just here in the city, but up and down the entire state of California. I knew we had to do things differently. Allowing somebody to live on a sidewalk in our city streets is condemning them to die on the street. That was unacceptable. I do not allow tent encampments in San Diego on our sidewalks anymore. Every individual has a right to shelter. But if we provide that shelter, you have an obligation to use it. So I started a series of new bridge shelters in San Diego. It's a bridge between living on the street and being able to stand on your own 2 feet in that place on your own. I don't want you off the street for for a night or for a week, but we want to help provide a safe, clean, sanitary, and supportive environment to get you off the streets for good.
If you've got a need, you're willing to work together, we can fix things 90% of the time. Before we had the bridge shelters, people had no choice. And that's why the judges, they wouldn't enforce the policy because there was no alternative to being homeless, because there was no place to start the process to get off the street. Everybody drank the Housing First Kool-Aid, which I knew. There was a city council meeting and they said, we're not going to do shelters anymore because we're going to do housing first. And I said on camera with all the news agents outside, this is going to be a disaster because now people don't have any place to go to wait for that housing that may or may not ever come. Look at the billions and billions and billions of dollars being wasted right now in communities like Seattle, Portland, LA, San Francisco, San Jose, billions of dollars by allowing people to kill themselves publicly. Where you could take that same money and invest in people on the street and say, you're better than this.
Bridge shelters are so much more than a shelter. Housing navigation, how do we match you with resources to get that apartment of your own? Dealing with mental health and substance abuse issues, dealing with job training issues, bringing all of those services underneath one location. One of the changes that I made was establish a series of storage centers for personal belongings, free of charge. It has allowed our streets to be much cleaner. Again, it was the right thing to do by changing that dynamic, providing the incentive to do the right thing, but also the consequences if you do the wrong thing. I'm proud that we're the only urban county in California where homelessness has gone down the last 2 years. And there's nothing more I like than to interact with somebody who maybe was a skeptic of what we were doing in terms of putting up a bridge shelter or the help and support that we're given. They come back to me and say, Mr. Mayor, you know what? This worked out pretty well.
San Diego reduced its unsheltered homeless population by more than 20% in recent years. What does San Diego understand that its neighbors don't? That compassion must work with accountability, and that by banning street camping, we can incentivize people to seek better opportunities.
Back to the old days where you would have tent encampments. That was not helpful to the individuals, obviously, that were living on the streets. It's not helpful for your neighborhoods, for your business. That's the wrong approach. That's the failed status quo approach.
If I was on the street and you'd come up to me when I was sitting there hitting my heroin on my foil and they said, hey, if you said, hey, Tom, you want to go to rehab? Do you have a drug problem? My answer to you would have been, what drug problem? I'm just chilling out here, man. That's what most people say. I agree with Mayor Faulconer on the issue of street camping and that so long as we have a shelter bed that we can offer them, they should be obligated to take that shelter bed, at least for a day or two, right? To just try it, what it's like getting off the street.
In Austin, some individuals are taking action into their own hands. And Alan Graham believes there's a better approach.
We believe very powerfully that government should only play a subsidiary role to you and I in mitigating these profound human needs that our society explores. What we want to do is encourage people to move out of that transactional mentality that we're going to go build, $600 billion worth of housing over here, and we're going to put people in there and it's going to solve this housing problem. It's not.
The people that we serve here are the hardest to house. The average age of the people who live here is 58 years old. The average length of time on the streets is 10 years. These are folks that genuinely, they never thought they would get off the streets. They were certain that they would be on the streets until they died. What we believe is that the forged family has to come around them, right? That it is all of us. And what happens in our culture today is that we've abdicated responsibility for that to the government. And we've said, City Hall, state government, federal government, this is your problem to solve. And it's not. It's a human problem. It's all of us. When you decide on one way, you're limiting innovation. And that's really what's happened. Community First, the movement, is an innovation. Lots of people thought that this model could never work. We continue to invest in relationship. We continue to show up for each other. And it turns out that community actually does work.
Community First Village gives homeless individuals something Housing First policies can never: a family. People holding each other accountable, supporting each other. By providing a sustainable ecosystem for these individuals to thrive in, drug addiction, alcohol use, and other harmful behaviors have plummeted.
How do you bring somebody into purposeful living? And when you look at what's happening inside this community, what they're being given is a community, organic farming operation, a blacksmithing shop, a wood shop, an art house, all the things that allow people to wake up in the morning and have purpose. Well, there's rules to live here. You must pay rent. And do you know that we don't have a rent collection problem here and never have? Because everybody knows that they must pay rent. When you pay rent, turns out that you're invested. You have skin in the game, and every human needs to have skin in the game. And that is what is lacking out there on the streets.
Incentives and accountability work. The Dell Fund in New York City has transformed tens of thousands of lives through its Ready, Willing, and Able program, which combines paid work, transitional housing, and comprehensive social services, including sobriety support. An independent study by Harvard University found that Ready, Willing, and Able graduates are 60% less likely to be convicted of a felony 3 years after exiting the program. Researchers at the University of Alabama tested a similar hypothesis by providing homeless with housing conditioned upon drug and alcohol treatment. They found that 64% of residents maintained sobriety. Instead of pumping billions of dollars into housing first, it's time to use performance-based funding that rewards the programs that truly make a difference. For the price of one housing unit in San Francisco, we could build dozens of transitional shelters or fund proven treatment programs. Meanwhile, our elected officials must promote policies that address the root causes of homelessness.
What I think everybody's aim should be is this: self-sufficiency. We don't want people in this perpetual cycle. We want financial independence. We want emotional independence. We want independence that's perhaps free of a substance that's keeping them down.
We always are told that me and Craig, we're not the most compassionate individuals in the world. We take the compassionate approach by making it happen for people. And making it happen also means sometimes telling them no. But what we don't do is we don't give up on anyone. No matter what they do, how they do it, we're going to be there for them. That's what keeps us going and keeps us moving toward whether we have no money or not, we will still do this work.
Homelessness is a humanitarian crisis, but there are solutions. By denying the solutions, we excuse ourselves from making hard choices that can transform lives. It's easy to hand someone an apartment key and think that the problem is solved. It's hard work getting them to treatment, holding them accountable, and helping them return to a productive, safe, and healthy life. But that work must be done if we truly care for the most vulnerable among us.
Wow, very powerful, very, 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 very powerful video. Man, it's nice to have a video like that and have the actual people here. So it's great to see Craig and everybody here. This is going to be a great conversation, community. I hope you saw that video. Very touching. It was a very emotional video for me. But there's a lot of questions that I have to ask, and we have the right people here to answer these questions. So we're going to open it up and start getting started. I know Erica had to get out of here or had some Wi-Fi connective issues, but I'll turn over to Steve and we can get this conversation going.
Well, thank you, John. Yeah, you know, every time I watch the video, it does remind me that in many aspects, San Francisco has also been a leader. We've got several navigation centers. We also have congregate shelters. There's rental subsidy programs. There's population-specific opportunities, be it TAY or others that have access to an array of opportunities. I think The work of Our City, Our Home has also been fantastic through Prop C, funding a lot of programs. I think some of the underlying stuff as it pertains to me and some of the feelings I get when I watch it is the experience of what it's like to be homeless. And, you know, having been a person that has been in those situations, often I was on the run when I didn't have anywhere to live. And it continues to complicate the issues. And what do we need to do as a community to improve the lives of people? It's a little bit different than just giving somebody a place to live, right? That is one aspect of making their life better. But how do we help them regain their place in the community? And what does that path really look like? And, you know, the filmmaker, Anthony Polino, who made this film, did an amazing job. But I'd like to just get the panelists in there. And I think people should just start asking questions. My favorite question is, how did we get here? I got out of prison in December of 2010. Wasn't like this. Now I'm going to say something that will likely be controversial. Seems like around 2014, things started exploding on our streets. Same time we had some reform legislation, which was much needed, take place. But I never saw people shooting dope or selling dope on the streets prior to November 1st, 2014. I didn't see it. Once Prop 47 passed, which I don't think we should be sending people to prison for stupid drug crimes by any means. But I also don't think we should have people shooting dope and throwing syringes all over the streets when we have children and families living in these neighborhoods. And, you know, I get called out for saying things like this, but my favorite social leader was a guy named John Marhar. People may or may not know who he is, but he was asked a question once and they said, you know, he's a founder of Delancey Street. And they said, John, what is in this for you? And he said, well, when you got no formal education and you've been in trouble your whole life, you can either be a bum or a good social leader. And all of us failed at being bums. So we only really have one thing left to do. And that's to continue to challenge the status quo to ensure that the lives of people improve. And it's unpopular, man. And so I want to hear from the guys in the film. I was not in it. And these folks have firsthand experience. They work with folks all day long. So, you know, how did we get here? How did this moment happen where there's so many people living on our streets using drugs?
Hey, Steve, even though that's unpopular, I'm right there with you. I was out there yesterday with our young people. It's very disturbing for our young people to have to jump over people with needles. And you know, like Cedric said, you know, people just don't care, right? But we got to provide the services and the resources for the community. I see people taking number twos on the street openly in front of the kids, right? But how do we get our city officials? How do we get the folk to put bathrooms, more pop-up restrooms? Like, it's a lot of stuff that needs to happen, but I'm gonna close up because I want to hear from Calvin. I want to hear from Craig and Brother Thomas and Cedric and Miss Victoria Westbrook. Phenomenal stuff. The questions in the community, I know they sitting there itching. Go ahead, Craig. You could kick us off, and then Cedric, and let's move this thing around. Let's get this conversation going. You got to unmute yourself, Craig. Unmute yourself.
There you go. It was really, what I was really happy about was that someone had the heart to make a video like that depicts the actuality of what's going on the streets, and also to look at other places that are doing things differently, because it is about innovation. It's not about imitation. And what we see is the Tenderloin is turned into a containment zone. And when I say containment zone, I'm saying it's no different. Those tents is no different than the tin huts that used to be in Johannesburg, where they hoard all the people, disenfranchised, the poor people, the people of color, into one spot and leave them and let them sit there and die. They're not addressing any of the issues. When the cops walk down the street on their beats, they only mess with people that they catch selling drugs. The ones that are using drugs, they walk right past them. They don't even say nothing to them. I remember years ago, if you got caught on the street with a pipe, you caught a case. If you didn't catch a case, they at least took your pipe and broke it. They're not even doing that. They're just allowing people to get high and get loaded and just do whatever they want to do. But the issue I have about all of it is that we have no alternative approaches except for one in San Francisco. And our poor position was that our community needs to be held accountable, not made comfortable. We already don't need comfortable. We need accountability. We need responsibility. And we need to take charge of our lives and do something different to become more productive. And that's why we push for the abstinence-based program, so that people could have a place to go and actually get clean, where we have zero tolerance with drug and alcohol use within the building, within the program. If a client gets high, we don't discharge them, we put them in detox, and then we try to bring them back. But the point is that there needs to be a place where somebody can go when they say, I want to get clean, and actually go there and get clean. And that has not been happening for a long time in San Francisco. Again, the focus has been on treating the homeless and making the homeless comfortable, which perpetuates the same problem over and over again, and it becomes more of the same. And there's nothing changing. It's just more of the same, more of the same. And that's why everything is increasing. Overdose is increasing, homelessness is increasing, because it's more of the same. And we have to become innovative, and we have to start approaching this from different angles, and we need to push and force policy change. We can't keep asking for it. The community has to speak up and force policy change. And we have to get in there and holler at these people and make them wake up. Because right now, DPH is asleep.
You know, I'm glad you had said that, Craig, about placing people in the Tenderloin and or putting them in little ghettos. Because what you just described is, you know, a lot of people talk about these people are dying in the street and calling it the deaths or homicide, but what that really is genocide. Because genocide is putting a certain population of people, an ethnic group, and in our case, it's going to be substance users, brown people, black people, poor people, all in one area, and allowing them to die. And in anywhere in the world, that would be genocide. And what this city has allowed us to do is to get anesthetized to it. By you watching it every day and seeing it every day, you think it's not really that important. And then it's about poor people, but we're playing politics with people's lives again. We have progressives in this city that are looking only, let me put it this way. They took the George Floyd, Oscar Grant, Mario Woods, all the African-American people that have died at the hands of police, took that money from the police department and gave it to the progressives who allowed the city to fall apart. And that's the part that it breaks my heart. And then I have to look at the focus on this part. My lane is in substance abuse and people coming out of prison and incarceration, but I'm also a black man. And it's my duty as an African-American to be able to look care and take care of my people. And one thing I know for sure and two for certain is that we only make up about 3 to 5% of the population of San Francisco, but we are out there in them streets 35% deep, suffering from mental health illnesses, homelessness, and addiction. And then this reminds me, when you look at the streets of San Francisco, it was like looking at the brothers and sisters that was under the bridge in Haiti. And part of the thing about the brothers and sisters that's in Haiti, that the Statue of Liberty at the bottom of it, it says, give me your poor, give me your tired, and give me your, but it only refers to certain people. And it's the same way what I see here in San Francisco. It only refers to certain people that they come in and help. Unfortunately, black and brown people and poor people don't fit into that category. So they get played with as tools and test tube babies to be able to push this agenda that's being pushed by the progressives. And this is one important thing that we cannot deflect from. We cannot act like it don't exist. We can't sit on our hands anymore. And it's really time to stand up and be able to call them on it. They got billions of dollars in this city, and not necessarily saying that we have to have billions of dollars, but they have billions of dollars in this city that they're playing with and telling who the money can go to. And none of that money that they took from the police have went to any black-owned organization, any African-American organization. And any of that money they have not listened to the community, not one bit. And the people I'm talking about right now is DPH. And my whole point about DPH, who has failed us and has failed the city and county of San Francisco, and even the district attorney has failed the city and county of San Francisco. And one thing I would always say this, and I'm gonna leave it right here. Chester Bodine need to go arrest the Department of Public Health, because if I was killing people at that alarming rate, they'd have me in custody. And after he arrests him, he need to lock himself up.
Wow.
I actually want to add. Oh, go ahead.
Powerful words, but I gotta say something because I'm big on accountability, and I hear Craig. I hear it. I'm about accountability, and so you're talking my language, right? But here's the deal, because I didn't know this, right? And this is why this conversation is important. So, Craig, are you telling me that in San Francisco we have transitional housing, we have substance abuse recovery centers where we have people actually using in the same facility as people who are trying to be abstinent? Is that what you said? Because I want to make sure I heard this right. So we don't have a clean center for people who just want to get clean. We have people using while people are trying to get clean in the same facility. Is that what you said?
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Terrible.
That's exactly
terrible. We can't have that. Definitely we can't have that. That's terrible.
So you think I'm making this up and I'm saying out the side of my neck? Check the statistics on how many people have OD'd in the navigation centers, in the shelters, and the treatment programs in San Francisco. Just look at the OD rates. That's all you get.
If I could just add something to that.
Yeah, go ahead, jump in here. I got some other questions, but go ahead, jump in here, Tom.
Step two.
So look, in San Francisco, and not just in San Francisco, but throughout the state of California, if you want to open a treatment center in San Francisco, a drug treatment center, in order to secure funding from the Department of Public Health to open a treatment center, you must practice a harm reduction model. If you want to practice an abstinence-based model or a faith-based model, like the Salvation Army, for example, they're not eligible to receive funds from the Department of Public Health because they won't ascribe to the policy that's actually written in to the city charter as to how those programs are funded. And I know that's more nuanced, but that makes a difference because now you're limiting the amount of recovery programs that you can have in the city. And we have at least 25,000 drug users in San Francisco. We have a population of 800,000 people. We have 35 detox beds in all of San Francisco and only 543 drug treatment beds sanctioned by the Department of Public Health. It's sad. It's sad.
That's not even a Band-Aid. That's that's kissing up to God kind of stuff. That ain't even a Band-Aid. And I mean, that's just part of it. But it didn't like what Tom was saying about the minimum qualifications. I always have to go to this. In order to get a contract to provide any kind of services through the Department of Public Health, you have to have a 5-year track record with them, along with taking on their vision. So if you don't have a contract where you've been with San Francisco for 5 years, providing services, you're not even eligible because that's the minimum qualifications they ask for funding. So what happens is all the mom and pop, all the faith-based, all the 12-step, all the recovery type programs that do want to do something about what's going on in the community aren't qualified to even request the RFP, which is a request for proposal. They're not even qualified to do it. Plus, there's no technical assistance to upgrade or bring in innovative programs in San Francisco to help create a different kind of approach. And what we've had to do is fight tooth and nail with the city and with the community saying, we want something different. And they will still tell us, well, we are giving you what you need. And we're saying, you don't know what we need because we're telling you what we need and you're ignoring us. And that, again, really feels like a lot of institutional racism.
You know, there was a couple leaders that
I need something and you tell me that I don't need it.
Right. I also want to speak on a program that I'm familiar with through DPH, and it's the DA program, the Direct Access to Housing, where they take people from the Tenderloin or homeless people that are literally, face to the street, and they put them in brand new apartments. And so in my profession, I do public health programming in a lot of housing sites. So I see firsthand when homeless people come into these brand new apartments, but don't have the tools, the resources to maintain these apartments. I see also firsthand within 3 to 5 years that a lot of these residents, they die because they die from diabetes, they die from overdosing on drugs, lack of treatment of HIV, and social isolation. And so that just tells you right there that just with any programming, there needs to be just like a baseline, a comprehensive approach, because these people are not having access to food, they're not having access to treatment. social connectedness, those resources that could actually be provided in a housing setting. And so this just goes off of what you're saying, Craig, about how it's the same old program, the same old thing. I'm working with a lot of counselors that don't get trainings to for innovation. They don't receive any sort of skill building to help address the situation. And so I just wanted to add on to what you were saying about what I'm seeing firsthand, and how once they get into the housing, a lot of people can't even stay alive for 5 years.
Yeah,
for the exact reasons.
you bring up a really good point. Like the housing first people want to say that the problem is that people don't have a house, right? But in 2020, we know over 700 people overdosed, and the majority of the people that overdosed were in the SROs and the SIP hotels. So obviously housing does not solve that, right? And you also bring up another point, like people need community, they need support, they need real, true, holistic support. And that's really why one of, I think, West Side and Positive Directions is so successful with the people they serve, is that, yes, they hold people accountable and they stress responsibility. But when people walk through their doors, they gain family, not just community, like family. And it's vital. It's vital to solving the problems that we have.
Now, all it is, because I want to take a step back too, and go back to the root of a lot of it too, is we got to go back to mental health. How big is the mental health substance abuse combination playing a big part of it? Because I listened to the video and I still think this is the biggest problem that we face. Mental health is a big part of what's going on when we talk about substance abuse and housing. How do we monetize? How do we get the mental health services? So when people deal with trauma from violence, domestic violence, a lot of these people, when I hear these stories, are getting into homelessness, into drugs due to some of the traumatic things that happen in life. How do we implement the mental health in the substance abuse to help combat some of the homelessness in the city?
I'm going to just do it like this here, and I'm going to just talk about how we do it. You have to be culturally specific about anything that you approach. And when you're approaching people of color and people who are disenfranchised, if you're not taking a culturally specific approach to how you're addressing their mental health issues and how you get them in treatment and how you get them the help they need, they are not going to access it. The way the system is set up very bureaucratic, it's very systemic, and it does not approach the community in a way where people feel safe enough to go to them and ask for the help they need. And I will say this, meth has been a big factor in bringing out the mental health issues that you're seeing going on in our community. And like I said, we have people in our places that have mental health issues. But what they do is just like if you at your mother's house, and I'm going old school with this, you didn't get high in your mama's house. You didn't disrespect your mama's house. That was your family, and when you came to your family, you acted like you was part of that family. What you did on the streets, you did on the streets. But when you're in the house with us, that's how we are. We family. And we're going to look out for you. And if you got mental health issues flaring up, we're going to get you the help you need. And they're going to trust us because it's a family member taking you to go get your help. And they go. And this is what I'm saying about we got to quit doing more of the same. And we need to be more creative and innovative about how we approach the situations that's going on in our town. And that's not where everything is more the same. And I keep going back to that because that's what it is. And when you try to do something different, you get attacked.
So, Craig, I got to ask you this question, and I'm going to take fire for it, but I'm willing to take fire because I see a trend happening in this city and across this country. Is the progressive movement the new systemic racism?
You just answered your own question. So you just said it. But somebody else going on those lines, though, about the mental health piece. In this day, everybody almost suffers from mental health. I mean, who don't? A lot of us on here now suffer from mental health, and we just don't know it. But the thing is, like what happened in San Francisco is that the state started paying more money for mental health when you went, so they decreased the funding in substance abuse or substance use. And it started, everybody who started going to treatment and going to programs all of a sudden appeared with a diagnosis. And for me, whether they had a diagnosis or not. And then you have to look at with methamphetamine, it sometimes produces a drug-induced psychosis, which creates some mental health issues. So in order to deal with the mental health, we have to be able to separate the two. First, get a person sober so we can make a true evaluation, whether it's mental health or whether it's the substance use. And sometimes it is a combination of both, and you have to deal with them simultaneously. So one of the most important things, though, is like what Craig was talking about, you still have to be patient and deal with it with care. Speaking of African Americans, we were always out of the system because, you couldn't even, we have a young African American males, a lot of them have been exposed to schizophrenia and they didn't know it, that's what it was. And a lot of times it's when they first went away to school or college or started smoking marijuana, it triggered the schizophrenia even more so. And they weren't allowed to do that. So that's something that needs to be education done in our churches, done in our communities, looked at early in elementary school, especially for the males, because for the women, it happens later on in their 20s, 22, 23. But for the males, it can start happening in the teenage years. So that's some of the things that we have to be preventive on that part and start looking at that early on and remove that stigma that's attached to it, that's in our community.
I think you hit it right on the head, right, Cedric? I've been advocating for this. I've been saying that the Human Rights Commission means it's too much intervention and it's too much reaction in our city. We need prevention, okay? This intervention and reacting and stuff, it just ain't working, right? We got to figure out ahead of time. And I think Craig hit it on the head. The model needs to change. We need leadership and we need organizations within the city and county to understand the language, the way we write up these grants, the way we put it out for the community. We got to change it. That's the only way we're really going to have true impact. Okay, because these models are not working. And again, I'm always here talking about how do we be innovative? How do we get our elected officials to get behind the people that's in the street? You people here are the people that should be writing those bills, making it happen. Because you've been there, you understand it. We got the experts right here. We got people who never lived that life, never been in the community, never did that work, making the decisions, and those models fail. But we continue to fund those models. But when we bring new ideals to the community, we bring new ideals how it should be run, everybody's afraid. They go, well, we don't want to do that because we don't know what's going to happen. Well, the models that we have right now, we're spending all of this money and it's not working. When do we put a stop to this and put the roadblock up and recreate something new that's going to impact the community? And it has to be starting with prevention. We cannot do intervention and reaction. We see where that gets us. We need prevention. And I think Craig and Thomas said it perfectly. This lawlessness that we have in our city and across this country is the problem. Accountability is big. If we don't hold people accountable, things are going to continue to happen. We're headed down a spiral. This crisis is growing every day. But for Tom, I want to hear more about, because I think a lot of people are impacted with the same thing that Tom is dealing with when you talk about work. We talk about this COVID. When you talk about what we're going through, people are losing their jobs, right? Now you're triggering something mentally that's putting people back to getting high. They want to feel good. But how do we put the preventive measures in to make people feel good so that they're not going to that low point? That's what I want to know. I think that's the important part that we got to focus in on, especially when we're talking about policy and we're talking about funding to the right community organizations. Right. We got to hear from the people.
I think what part of the problem is that we're really far behind the 8 ball already. Like the drug crisis and the homeless crisis has progressed beyond just local control at this point. It's a statewide issue. It's a national issue. There's 500,000 homeless people in the United States on any given night. There's at least 165,000 homeless people just in California alone. And so we need to start looking at bigger things instead of leaving it to local municipalities where you'll have a situation like in San Francisco, you have 543 treatment beds, but in Yolo County, about 100 miles northeast, they have 0 treatment beds. But there are people up there that are struggling with substance use and mental health too, and they have absolutely no resources whatsoever. So this is where we have to start looking at the bigger picture, because homelessness itself, if we don't get our arms around it now, it will be our undoing. It will be our undoing. It is creating something called neo-feudalism, where you're creating a permanent underclass of people across all socioeconomic lines, because once you're on the street, you oftentimes turn to drugs and mental illness becomes prevalent. So regardless of how you got to the street, once you're on the street and you're addicted to drugs and you're struggling with mental illness, the end result is the same. So at this point, we also have to look at how can we get the 165,000 people that are out there, or the 17,000 people that are homeless in San Francisco, the kind of help that they need now. The answer to that is, for most people, it's housing, but it's housing with services. And I really want to stress that, services in quotation marks, because you hear that term bandied about a lot. Oh, we're going to give them housing with services. Well, you know that in Finland, right, in Europe, and this is what all these advocates talk about with Housing First working out so great. They always point to Europe, right, is to say how great it works over there. Well, did you know that in Finland, where they've solved their homeless crisis with Housing First, they have 7 staff members for every 21 people in permanent supportive housing? Do you know that in San Francisco, we average 2 case managers per 70 residents in our permanent supportive housing? And the permanent supportive housing aren't nice new houses and apartments. They're old motels and hotels that we bought in the 80s and converted, that have shared bathrooms, 1 bathroom at the end of the hall for everybody, no kitchen in their room, right? Bed bug issues, there are roach infested issues, rat infested issues, plus there's drugs inside. Everybody knows what's going on. I know, I worked as a case manager in permanent supportive housing in San Francisco. That is not the model that Housing First is supposed to be on paper. What we're doing here in San Francisco is really blurring the lines between housing and warehousing human beings, and that is not equitable at all. Since the majority of those people that are getting housed there are either chronically homeless or people of color, people that have been in prison and all that. So what are we doing? We just throwing them in a room and forgetting about them, just like Craig was saying. So we need to look at how we spend the money. We need to talk about who's in charge of making those decisions on how the money is being spent. Right now with Prop C, 75% goes to housing, 25% goes to mental health and substance use treatment. It would have been nice if we thought about maybe making it more of a 50-50 split, because if you want to house somebody, if you don't provide them the services, just like Craig was saying and everybody was saying in the documentary, what are you really doing? You're just getting them out of sight, and that's not fair.
Exactly. I want to go ahead and give it to Steve. I know Steve been waiting patiently. Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you, John. So a couple of things. I think globally, at least in San Francisco, nobody listens to the community. Nobody is interested in what they say, because everything has been hijacked by academics, clinicians, professionals, and policymakers. There's an incredibly huge disconnect between policy and the community. I think one of the things that I'm proud of our work, which started under Chief Fletcher, was we started not only hiring formerly incarcerated people like me and Victoria, but we promoted us to leadership roles. So we're not desk clerks, we're not case managers. No, we actually have autonomy to make decisions and develop programs and supervise operations of the Reentry Council. And through that work, we were able to launch a Recovery Summit working group. And through this working group came a lot of information from data we collected as a representation of what the community wanted. And Supervisor Safai, my old colleague Joffrey Morris, who now works for him, with support by Supervisor Stephanie, were able to help us advocate for a program the community wanted. And so the mayor launched in September 9th, I think, was the Positive Directions TRP Academy, which is an abstinence-based therapeutic teaching community. Everyone on this call has said there's a lot of other beds in San Francisco for people that are struggling with addiction. There was no place for people to go to be away from all those drugs. And this was the one carve out. I think that some of the issues that are happening now is that there's so much interest tied to dollars that if you don't go along with the status quo, you're bad. Or if you're not bad, you're stupid. And so I will continue in my role to push the status quo so that it's representative of what the community actually wants. So I don't think it does anybody any good to live in a tent and shoot dope. I equally don't think it does anybody any good to spend $800,000 on one unit to put one person in there so then they have a new place to shoot dope. What I do think is that we need to help people realize their potential. And the way you do that is by addressing what's putting people in those positions. I cannot be the only person who was always guilty. I cannot be the only person who burnt every bridge I ever went over. I cannot be the only person that fucked over my family, my friends, my girlfriend. Anybody who came into my path left that path saying, dude, just stay the fuck away from us. Like, and that's what drug addicts do. But like, you can't even call people drug addicts anymore. You say that word, that's another evil word. I think Cedric, Craig, and myself, all those who came from Delancey Street, kind of embraced the scorn society threw at us. Because at some point, you got to be honest about who you are, what you do, and what the results of that actions are. So I'm really proud of the work we're doing. I do think the Department of Public Health is, through Mental Health SF, is launching another platform. Now, I'm not going to say it is or isn't connected to the community. That's a different scenario. But they are launching more beds for treatment and mental health issues. I think one of the challenges, what happens, somebody talked about funding. So Medi-Cal funds drug treatment. Medi-Cal, which is a state level program, has requirements. So the Department of Public Health has to follow those requirements because this is all tied to what a doctor or a researcher, which we could have a whole show on just research in and of itself, is tying to those outcomes. I paroled to Health Right 360. We can have the conversation about outcomes. Craig and Cedric have staff that work at Health Right 360. So we can continue to talk about what outcomes mean. I said it very publicly when I was at Health Right 360. I've said it all the way along. If you have a pulse, you should be able to finish that program. And that's pretty pathetic. When you're sitting in North Block at San Quentin and people are saying, hey, you should go to this program because you can get on pain management, you can be on methadone. Like, I think the goal should not be stay loaded. The goal should be get sober so you can be present in your life. My parents are watching right now, and it's too bad they didn't have access to the chat, because if you understood what my family went through because of what I did, they didn't do any of it. What I did, people would understand what addiction does to families and to children. And we always leave children out. Cedric mentioned it in the film, talked about families, often references the children. Another one of my peers does the same thing, where he brings the children into every conversation, because that's our next generation of